You're listening to The Time-Saving Teacher from Scattered to Strategic with Allison Howd. The biggest question I get asked is, do you remember everybody's name? And the truth is, I do remember my students. I don't always remember their names, especially at the beginning of the year. It's kind of like trying to remember everyone you've ever met. And the more I have a class, definitely the more I remember them. And since I teach them kindergarten through 5th grade, I do remember. But sometimes I need a reminder, like who they sit beside or what computer they're at. And that helps me place the name with the kid I already know. I really do try, though, and names are just genuinely hard when you're working with this many students. Hi, I'm Allison, that tech-savvy teacher, and this is the Time-Saving Teacher from Scattered to Strategic. And today I want to walk you through something I do that saves me a real amount of time every single year, and it's not complicated. It's just this. Before I label anything, I stop and think about how long I'm actually going to be using it. And that one question changes how I set up everything, whether you're teaching 800 plus kids like me or the same 25 kids all day long. And here's what I mean. I do label things. I'm not against labels, but I'm careful about it because relabeling something every single year is genuinely time consuming. And it's one of those tasks that quietly adds up without you even noticing. So here's the question I ask myself. Is this something I'll use once for this one group, this one year? Or is this something I'm going to reach for again next year and the year after that? And if it's the second one, a kid's name does not go on it, but a number does. And this started way before I ever taught technology. It started my very first year I taught. Even back when I had one classroom, one group of kids all day, every day, I never put names on Cubbies. I never put names on the folders I plan to reuse or on book bins. I used class numbers instead. And not because the kids didn't have their own identity. They have plenty of that. It's because Cubbies and folders and book bins are things I use year after year after year. And I did not want to sit there every July or August scraping off last year's names and writing new ones. So names go on the personal things like name tags, their desk, but anything with a long shelf life in my classroom, it got a number. Now, teaching technology and seeing multiple classes a day, that same question applies, but at a bigger scale. My students have computer numbers that they go to instead of name tags. And those numbers get reused by every class, every grade, every year. So if I try to make something specific to one particular group of 5th graders, I'd be rebuilding that same thing constantly. So I asked the same question I asked with the Cubbies. Am I going to need this exact setup again? And if the answer is yes, I just make it generic enough to reuse. That's actually part of why I keep one lesson plan per grade level instead of one per individual class, even Google Classrooms. My first year teaching technology, I made a Google Classroom for every single 5th grade class and every single 4th grade class, but I had 7 of each of those classes, and that really did add up. And so now I just do one class for every single grade level. Now, all my 5th graders get the same plan, and not because every class is identical, because they're not, but because I know that going into that, I'm going to be teaching the same version of this plan 7 times. So I build the plan once, generic enough to work for all of them, but I plan for the differentiation separately. And I do want to be honest about this part because a lot of you are going to need to actually write your differentiation into your lesson plans, especially if you're documenting for IEPs or 504s or your school requires it on paper. But you could just put a note in how you might differentiate it. If you're someone who needs that documentation, the system still works the same way. You're just not writing a whole separate lesson for every class. You're writing one solid plan and then a short note for how you'll adjust it for the groups that need something different. And the plan's still reusable. The differentiation is just the layer on top. Then there's the flip side of this, and this is just as important. Not everything is going to need a reusable system. Example, my 2nd graders, they get printed login cards, and they're the only grade that does. And I built a spreadsheet, and I formatted it so I can print a full sheet for each class, and I can cut each of the kids' names on 3 sides, and the card tears off like little tabs, kind of like pulling a number off a flyer on a bulletin board, and I can print and cut a brand new set for all 7 classes in my rotation in about 10 minutes. So I don't save those. I don't organize them in a binder to reuse next rotation. I just throw them away and print fresh ones every 7 days because the time it would have taken to build a system to save, sort, and store something that small isn't going to save me time. It would be a lot more than the 10 minutes that it takes me every 7 days for my filing system. So 10 minutes a week beats a filing system I'd have to maintain. So that's really the whole principle. Before you build a system or before you decide how to label something, ask how long you're actually going to be using it. If it's long-term, make it generic and reusable. And if it's short-term and small, sometimes the fastest option is just to remake it and let it go. So here's what I want you to walk away with today. 1, look at what you're relabeling every year: cubbies, folders, bins, nameplates, and ask if a number or a generic label could replace that so you're not redoing it every August. 2, if you teach multiple sections of the same grade, you likely don't need a completely separate written plan for each one. You just need one solid plan plus a note on how you'll adjust it for the groups that need it. And 3, not everything deserves a system. Some things are genuinely faster to just remake than to store and organize. So know which of your tasks falls into which category, because that's really the whole game. Another place I use the same idea is how I share things with my students week to week. I don't reinvent that format every week. It stays consistent. Same layout, same place they know where to look, and I just swap out what's inside it. That's a whole system on its own, and honestly, we could spend a full episode just on that one alone. In fact, we might do that later. But the short version is, once students know where to look and what to expect, I'm not spending class time re-explaining it every single week. And I do this with my class website. Instead of recreating links and instructions every year or having the same "where do I find this" conversations with my students, it's already built and just sitting there. I update what's inside it. If you don't have something like that built yet, here's what that usually looks like. Every year, you're recreating the same links, the same information, the same "how do I find this" conversations, because there's nowhere permanent for any of it to live. And you're rebuilding from zero instead of updating something that already exists. That's exactly why so many teachers put a class website off. It sounds like a bigger project than it needs to be. And it doesn't have to be. I have a course called Google Sites Made Simple that walks you through building your class website step by step, so you're building it once and reusing it every single year, the same way I do with mine. And I'll drop the link in the show notes. Guys, happy teaching, and I'll talk to you next time. Every episode comes with a free resource to go with it. So you don't just hear the idea, you can actually use it. You'll find today's download linked right in the episode description. Grab it, no email required. And if this episode helped, the best thing you can do is hit subscribe so you don't miss next Tuesday.